Myself, Abhinav Chauhan. I am a sophomore at IIT Guwahati and a senior executive at TCL IIT Guwahati. I'll be your host for today's session. Our speaker for today's session is Mr. Akhil Sharma. He is a seasoned product leader with 15 plus years of experience across Razorpay, Adobe, Ola, and now at Entain. He is here to decode measuring success from metrics to PMF, a critical skill for every PM. So, without any further ado, let's welcome Mr. Akhil Sharma.
Thank you, Abhinav, for this opportunity. I'm very happy to connect with the folks, young enthusiasts on product side, what really looking at building a career within the industry. And I hope I'll be able to add some value today. So I think I've prepared a bit of a brief presentation for all of you. I think we it's just for our guidance so that we can actually move through some of the core topics, and then of course I'd want to keep some of the time for question and answers as well. So yeah, I am getting into this presentation mode. Let me know if you are able to see the screen. I might not able to be able to see the responses, so please feel free to unmute yourself, or maybe Abhinav, you can actually jot down the questions in between. Use chat wherever possible.
Yes, like they'll be given a 15-minute window at the end of the session for Q&A.
Sure.
So they can write their questions between the session and you can answer them after your presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, then let me know if you are able to see the screen. I'm entering the slideshow mode. Is this visible,
Yes, sir, it's
everyone?
visible. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think today's session is about measuring success from matrix to PMF. And I think you would have probably understood a lot of, and probably would have gone through a lot of sessions around how to think about metrics. This basically discussing a particular aspect of how you use metrics to really define a product market fit in there. Just to introduce myself, I'm currently working as a global director of product at Entain. Previously, I've worked at Razorpay, Ola, Expedia, and Adobe. And I'm also a product coach, speaker, and mentor at various forums, both nationally and internationally. Did my MBA from IIM Calcutta, BTech from NSIT, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn wherever you want for interesting discussions around product management. I'm happy to help wherever I can. Okay, so let's move forward. And I think there's a famous saying by Edwards Deming that really calls it out. In God we trust, but all others must bring data. So that's the topic that we are actually going to be talking about today. Why data is really crucial in terms of product management's decision making, and how can you actually use data to really identify what really clicks for the users in that. So for today's session, I think we'll basically be talking about three major aspects. One, of course, is the product management decision making process. And I guess most of you are from the product management club as well. So you would basically relate to these topics and all of these points as well. Even the entrepreneurs or the from founders who are trying to create digital products or products that they're actually looking to build for the markets would actually align with this philosophy as well. Second aspect is we need to identify how to really identify relevant metrics for your product. And we'll talk about an example in there. We'll also go through an exercise of sorts together so that we can actually understand how to think about metrics in that. And we'll also talk about how do you really identify out of all those metrics, which is a North Star metric for you. Of course, this session is short, so we'll want to cover it at an overview level, and we'll cover the depth in the question and answers. Then, okay. So you would have seen all the products around you. I'm assuming all of you use apps day in, day out, mobile apps day in, day out, computer apps, desktop apps day in, day out. Typically see a product manager who's actually managing a lot of those products. They would be keen on one or optimizing one or two major metrics in there. And that could be improving your conversion rate, making users come more often to your website, maybe thinking about how can you get more people to engage more often with your app. Think about Facebook, think about Instagram, think about Snapchat, or think about YouTube, for example. Engagement is key for product managers in there. And then you'd also want to think about, once the users have engaged, how do you monetize your business? How do you improve your signups? How do you get more activations in there? Typically, these are the decisions that you have to make on a day in, day out basis. And what really helps you there is your willingness and your foundation in terms of data based product decision making as such. So we'll talk about what are the core things product really say where data really helps you identify the customer behavior, what is working, what is not working. If you measure it, you would be able to see what users are telling you through their interaction with the product. It'll tell you what to build. So basically, whatever features are getting traction, whatever features are not getting traction, all of those things you would want to understand through data and measurement. And you would basically then be able to identify what is your return on investment that ways. That will also lead up to whether your products will be successful in the market or not. So if your customers like and understand the feature, that is where you invest more, and that's where you actually keep building your products. That's how you achieve product market fit as well, through this process of really identifying customer behavior, identifying the features that you want to build, and then eventually which are the ones that you want to invest into. And typically, it'll tell you whether your assumptions about your consumer behaviors are in line with um, what consumers are actually doing on the product in there. So a combination of these four factors would actually help you optimize your product over and over again through an iterative process. And we'll discuss a little bit about how you can actually make it happen through better measurement, better understanding of what to measure, and those kind of things. Let's actually quickly talk about say what PMF is also, and how do you really achieve it. Basically, this is where say modern day product management is. You want to think about small iterative changes, and you quickly try and optimize for within every iteration. You want to move closer and closer to that target that you've set for yourself. So the product market fit, let's say if you want to achieve a certain conversion on your product, you want people to engage at a certain level with your product so that you know that there is a particular need that your product has already served and the users are really liking it. Then that's what you've achieved in terms of product market fit itself. That's a key iterative process that we'll talk about today again and again within this presentation. I'll refer to that uh, in more occasions than one as well. Meanwhile, do make sure, say, if you're not understanding anything, if there are certain things that you'd want to discuss more, feel free to keep those things coming in on the chat, on the comments as such, so that we can actually discuss it either during the presentation or probably after uh, we complete this. So I'm sure some of you who've studied product or design also, or maybe students who've understood or studied industrial product management may have thought of, may have also studied mechanical production lines, industrial kind of disciplines, robotics, or even computer science. Any typical product really goes through four major cycles. And basically, this is a graph between sales over a period of time. During the initial stage or the introduction stage, you would actually see slower growth. You would keep on iterating and you'd actually find users will keep on giving you feedback till you perfect that product market fit. And this is where you call between introduction and growth phase. This is a major chasm that happens. There's a bit of a cliff that most of the products fall through uh, on, or in some of the cases, very few products actually just manage to cross. And that is when your product has actually achieved the right fitment with respect to a user need. At that point, you would see an inflection in terms of your growth curve. You would see the slope has changed for that, and that's when you enter the growth phase of your products. Think about how probably Gmail started initially. very slow introduction, referral based introductions. They were trying to perfect their product at that point. And once they knew that they had the market fit, they knew that the features were kind of relevant to the end user. At that point, they really opened it up as an open system beyond their beta or the referral program as such, and it took off from there. Now, I think almost 80% of the email usage across the world is through Gmail, and that's where they actually hit their growth curve. Within a year's time, I think they were really hitting and say basically they captured most of the market in that sense. At some point, the product also matures because you've actually captured uh, the lion's share of the market. That's where the market is. Basically, it is not growing at that point, and you'd see your product is also not growing at that pace. That's when you hit the maturity phase of your product cycle. And as you'd see, between introduction, between growth, between maturity, and eventual decline as well, the metrics that you would actually measure will vary across each of these stages. And the metrics that you would also want to optimize will vary. So your focus will vary across each of these life cycles. Maybe during the introduction, you're actually thinking about, say, are the users coming onto your app or not? During the growth phase, you're actually looking at, are they actually really engaging with your app? Are they actually, or with your product? Are they really, say, finding use on a continuous basis? Are they coming back to your app or not? During the maturity phase, that's when you're looking to milk the cow, as to say. Um, you basically think about at this point, can you are your users paying you for the usage that they have for your product, and at some point it'll decline as well. And that is the point wherein you would want to take decisions around whether you want to sunset the product, whether there are certain features of the product that are still getting traction, and can you actually spin off a new product through that line itself. So say product metrics and product life cycle have a very close role to play, and within this there is there lies product market fit, which is basically the alignment of the product, the features that it has with the target market's needs and preferences. That's when you hit the sweet spot. That's when you hit the hockey stick growth curves for your products. So I hope this is clear as a concept, and this is something that would be valuable as well when you think about product metrics going forward. Broadly, it's a very simplistic framework that modern day product management teams use. You really start with a product or a prototype. That's where you actually put it in front of the users. You start to observe uh, what is happening with the product. Are the people using it? Are people engaging with it? To identify where the gaps are people dropping off at certain points in the life cycle? Are people not finding or discovering the features that you want them to discover? That's where you actually create and basically cull out your insights overall. And after you've identified your gaps, at this point, you would actually create hypotheses. For example, let's say you identify Amazon, you're a product manager for Amazon, and let's say your users are basically coming to the site, but not really converting, not really buying products. And you identified that there's probably a gap on, say, between the checkout page and probably the payment success page. Now, your hypotheses for solving this kind of a problem could be maybe by solving the um, basically by solving the success rates of a payment gateway, I may be able to get better conversion because probably people are coming there and dropping off because they are not finding the right say kind of success when they are actually making the payment. Another thesis could be that the checkout page might be very complex and people might just be dropping off by off that page without really moving on to the next stage. Now you can actually go and hone these hypotheses even further by measuring more data around the checkout page or the payment success uh, pages, overall payment success or failure pages as well, or the kind of instruments the users are using. And all of these hypotheses is where you would want to build a product line. And of course, once you've validated a hypothesis with more data, you would actually want to go ahead and test it out in the market. That's where you would want to continuously build, smaller iterations, do A/B testing between two samples, and identify whether the change you brought has really an ability to change the user behavior itself. It's basically the null hypothesis negation, as you would have studied in statistics. You basically want to understand, say, whether a user who's coming in, is he likely to respond differently in statistically significant manner, or say enough people in a group will respond in the similar way if you actually present them with the same change. So that's the test that you're trying to do. And once you do the test, you again measure the data. You want to make sure, say, for the test, you have the right conversion metrics, right measurement metrics as well, or the test metric. So, for example, the thing that we were talking about, the scenario, uh, you would basically want to think about not just the overall conversion rate, but you would want to think about the conversion rate between the payment success pages, or the people who have landed on the checkout page, uh, up as the base versus the number of people who have made a successful purchase on the top. So now you'd want to optimize at that metric rather than the overall conversion rate within the test. And again, you'd measure this data against A and B tests, and you'd want to observe, identify the gaps. Again, you'll rinse and repeat the same cycle again and again. So this is the basic framework that modern day companies are using. Think about Googles of the world, think about B2B SaaS of the world right now. Think about AI companies, for example. That's how they've actually honed their models as well. Uh, every single change that they've brought in, the model has learned. This is the feedback loop that we talk about. They're measuring the data, they're testing the data, feeding that input into the next thesis. And typically, the approach is very clear. You start with the observations, you identify your thesis for solving the problem, identify hypothesis one, two, and three, or say, however, as many hypotheses you may have for explaining that gap. You set up a test, and then you learn, and the feedback loop continues from there. Typically, there's a particular structure of a hypothesis and a purpose that you can actually use why hypothesis is there in the first place. Um, so your hypothesis should be able to really call out three major things and two additional aspects of it. Say, where are you making the change? For whom are you making the change? And what are you making the change with? So basically, what are you looking to test? Are you testing the conversion rates? Are you checking the drop off rates? Are you checking the page click through rates as well? For example, are you making this change only for users who belong to a specific segment? Probably people who had come to a clothing, say, kind of a discovery category page. Or are you actually looking at agnostically across the site? Are you actually looking at it for electronic purchases and those kind of things? Where are you making the change? Are you making the change on the checkout page? Are you making a change on the field in there? Or are you making the change with a completely different payment integrator in there? Um, Typically, this should be able to define what is the expected outcome that you see from your product after that change, and why do you think so? So, what is your um, uh, data that actually supports your hypothesis? That's how your engineering teams will be able to build and test iteratively around your product lines in there. So that's a key concept that you should always remember when you think about data and measurement. Hypothesis is a simple template. You could use this, or as long as you understand the concept, you should be able to define what, where, who, why, and for whom, basically, in there. So typically, you could use a template. By making this change, I'll be able to see a quantifiable change in the following metric, because this is my reason. I've seen drop-offs happening on this page, and people who are dropping off, they are actually adding their credit card numbers, but not really getting success in there. Maybe that is the reason. Now, this is the core template in which you would want to think about optimizing your regular product management processes. But then let's actually identify. We've talked about metrics, we've talked about what do you want to measure, but really, is there a science on, uh, say, how to really select that one metric that you want to optimize for? So let's actually think about that. Um, Peter Drucker famously said, you can't manage or you can't improve what you can't measure or what you don't measure. So it's important that you have tracking at every single point in your product process, and you know what is relevant from a workflow perspective, workflow perspective that you really want to improve. Need to make sure that that is properly tracked, that is properly measured as a metric, and that think about whether this where it comes true. Is it just theoretical concept, or does it really apply in situations outside your digital products that you see as well? So there was this famous Vietnam War, and at that point, there was Robert McNamara, who was basically the Secretary of Defense on U.S. government, and U.S. was really pushing hard to win this war. You know what happened eventually, though. U.S. was never able to win over Vietnam. U.S. This is one of the wars that U.S. lost, in spite of all their military might, all their say arsenal and bombs that they had. They still lost that war. And eventually, the reason for that was basically they were not probably measuring the right metric for, say, moving ahead in the war. Say, how do you measure your progress when you think about your succeeding in a war or not? So they were blindsided by measuring the wrong metric across the war. They were really looking at uh, a kill ratio. So number of people they are able to kill for each of their soldiers, and their ratio of casualties that Vietnamese has had versus US soldiers. Uh, but do you think that was the right metric in there? Typically, if you see uh, what was missing in there, US soldiers within that um, region were always outnumbered by the soldiers from the Vietnamese area. So when you think about the concentration, say even if say a US soldier was able to kill two soldiers per US head count, they were always going to be say lagging behind because they had to transport their soldiers. And there was a lot of issue with respect to their soldiers being able to survive that war. Either they measured this strongly, or they measured the investments that went into the war very wrongly in that sense. So think about if this metric was probably the territories conquered, or if this metric was a little bit more around, say, uh, the end outcome that they wanted through the war. Basically, whether they were able to convert regions, whether they were able to annex regions. And then that would have been a very clear outcome-based success metric, and they could have measured that success based on that metric rather than the kill ratio, because they were doing well on kill ratio and still lost the war in that. So that's one of the key points on, see, how measuring the wrong metric itself can really be a disaster for say most powerful of the armies as well in your real world scenarios. And of course, think about it as a product manager. Think about what you have at stake when you are actually measuring uh, the wrong metric and you're optimizing for the wrong metric. And that. So that gives us the concept of a North Star metric. Typically, a North Star metric should be able to identify what is the customer value, what is the end outcome that you're trying to seek from your product or your interaction in there. It should be able to also tell you whether you are making success or you're making progress every single time that metric moves for you. So that's also one of the characteristics of a North Star metric. And eventually, if you hit your target on North Star metric, you should be able to achieve success for the organization, for the nation, for your product as such. So these are the three major tenets for defining your North Star metric. Always remember that's how you want to think about North Star metric, and that is one metric that you need to get your eyes on. So there's again a science and a process that you can actually think about when identifying the North Star metric. Think about a few things in there. So think about, when do your end customers reach the end result within your product? Let's take an example of YouTube. Say when a user browses through the video in their video library or the catalog which is there, at what is the end result that you want the user to have as such, or a user, why are they using the product as such? They're probably using it to watch a video. So that's the end result. Let's think about that. Second step is, does it apply to all my customers? Do all the customers who come onto YouTube, are they there just say with that same intention, or are certain users who are also seeking something else from the platform? So for example, on Facebook or Instagram, that might be slightly different. But on YouTube, this is very clear. Your end result is, say, all customers actually would want to visit with a YouTube only to see a video, for example. But for example, on Facebook or Instagram, they may be there to see the reels. They may be able to they may be there to connect with their friends. So there may be a difference of opinion in terms of what each customer might be looking at. So that's where you would want to think about a different metric in that sense, and you may want to broker it between those metrics. Now, let's think if that moment is measurable for us. For example, can you actually tag or track the event when someone watches a video? It's very easy. For example, you can see when someone has watched a video, there's a end event, there is the progress event. You can actually measure each of these, and you can track each of these against every user or every usage that happens within a session. So this is measurable for you. Think about what is the best frequency as well. So do you want to measure how many people watched a video over a period of a day, or a week, or a month? Depends upon how often you expect your users to use your product. So for example, something like a YouTube, you'd want to measure that on a daily basis in your case, because that's the level of engagement or the frequency of usage that the users have. But for example, if you're thinking about Amazon, you may want to think about it, say how many transactions are occurring over a month rather than on a day, because you don't expect your users to come in every single day and make a purchase on Amazon. So that's also an important consideration. Think about, is there an external factor that could affect your ability to watch for that to measure that video or the end user's outcome? So for example, do you see, say, when a user comes to your website, do they always watch a video because it is available on the platform, or is there a recommendation that they received from their friends, and they are just there to watch that video? So there may be an external factor that actually has some impact on their interaction with the platform. So maybe referrals count there and there, or say search patterns is something that you would also want to measure in terms of engagement. So number of searches resulting into a video output, or number of people who are landing onto your page or homepage, how many of them end up watching a video? Maybe that is one another option that you should look at. And then think about, if this metric grows for me, whether you would say YouTube is successful for or not. So if say you see your number of videos watched per user per day is growing, now does it actually also mean success for YouTube as a business? Typically, yes. Say, for example, you'd see, say, more people who are engaging with the app. If the model is mostly ad led, more people are spending more time on the app, and they are likely to see more videos during that, and YouTube is likely to earn uh, revenue through that. Now that actually also opens up another option for us, whether number of videos watched should be our core criteria, or whether the time or the minutes of video that someone has watched the video for, is that the more important criteria. And if you see, your business success is actually not linked to the number of videos you watch. It's actually linked to number of ads you saw within that period that you were there. So period in this case becomes important. So that means you better measure the minutes of someone's activity on a daily basis on your platform, so that whenever what is the time that they are spending in terms of watching the video, minutes spent in watching a video over YouTube as a platform per day per user. That actually is connected to your business growth directly. Does it also connect with your full pirate funnel? Pirate funnel, you can actually read a little bit. It's AAA, triple R metric. Does it actually relate to your acquisition? Does it relate to your activation? Does it actually connect with your monetization, revenue, referral, and say the overall retention cycle? So in this case, if you see more people are engaging, spending more time in watching videos on YouTube as a platform, it actually connects with everything. It connects with acquisition, it connects with an activated user, it connects with a user that you are able to monetize with revenue. And it is also probably a resultant of a user who's finding value and then probably will refer your product to other users. And similarly, it also gives you the final ability to basically get your users to be retained on the platform, because if they're finding value on a day in day out basis, they'll retain with your product. This basically tells me my North Star metric. Another question is whether this North Star metric is likely to change uh, often. So for example, is this North Star metric changing for me this month versus the other month? As long as turns out you don't change your business model, or if you don't introduce new product lines into your product, this is not likely to change. So that actually clears all your criteria. And then that means, say, for YouTube, probably the minutes of videos watched onto the platform becomes the great as your great NSM or North Star metric. So hope this model was very clear for everyone. It's a very useful model when you think about how to optimize your products day in, day out. Let's apply another model to think about North Star metrics. And let's take the example of Spotify in this case. So you would, when you start working within product organization here, organizations, you'll hear this word L0 and L1 metrics. And basically that's the input metrics that actually result to an output or an outcome metric. Mostly L0 is an outcome metric, L1 is the input metric aligned to that. Now let's walk through this process. Then let's say, what is the end outcome? Spotify. I'm assuming everyone knows what Spotify is. Maybe have used that as well. It's a music streaming app that is available. So as Spotify, I want to make sure the users spend more and more time listening to music on my platform. That's how I also earn my revenue through ads, through better subscriptions and those kind of things. Now let me see what actually constitutes the time spent into listening to music. So typically, uh, two factors that will actually contribute to this is basically how often users actually come to your app to listen to any song or music. And the second important lever for you to improve the average time spent per user listening to your music is basically identify if you can increase the time spent per session. That is basically how you would actually increase the value of that. Now, how would you get more users onto your app? Maybe with more notifications, the recommended artists that you know the user said have has liked, or say maybe new artists which are in the market who are really trending. Maybe for them, users will come in and see the app again. There are recommendations of songs that you know the genres that people have interest in, and similarly that will give you more users in there. Similarly, when you think about how do you optimize for time spent per session, now think about what are the ways that you have. The more the number of playlists that people will have on your app, more engaged will they will be with your app. Uh, this is an important action then. That means the easier it is for them to discover new songs, they'll spend more time in terms of listening to those songs as well, rather than dropping off. So if you see, we've been able to break down the L0 metric into multiple L1 level metrics in there. And that actually tells me how do I measure the success at each of these levels? Can I optimize certain elements at each level so that I can actually eventually get my eventual outcome as such? So I think I actually had designed it as a bit of an exercise, but let me actually just quickly call some examples. Spotify, for example, you want to measure it as a North Star metric with respect to time spent listening to music. Amazon Prime, number of active Prime users is another important aspect because here the model is subscriptions. You don't ideally earn through ads, while Amazon Prime has also brought in ads recently, but primary model for them is subscriptions. So if more subscriptions are there, the higher the chances that they'll earn revenue. Airbnb booked nights. It's very clear transaction focused platform, number of nights that are booked, the value is created both for the restaurants, or for the hotels, as well as the buyers in there. Ola or Uber, it's basically the rides booked. Again, it's a key transactional platform for both drivers and users. The end transaction really happens with respect to a ride booked. In there, Twitter, Facebook, monthly active users, because this is now much more complicated world. You don't want to measure just say the number of interactions that you have with users. These are complicated products. A user will land onto such a platform for engaging with content, for discovering new content, probably responding to certain content, or maybe starting their own threads. So it's basically the activity that a user has with your platform, and you basically measure it at a broader level as a monthly active user base. There's an exercise for all of you that, if the time permits, we can actually talk about, but I'm assuming we are already on time. So we can actually just break for questions at this point. Maybe it's something that you can try in your own groups. Maybe think about what could be the North Star metric for LinkedIn, Gmail, Google Drive. We discussed some of this also, or Twitter, we just discussed, Instagram, for example, as well. Just try and practice. Think about the products that you use on a day in, day out basis, and you start to find this idea. It's like maths. More you practice, you more of a muscle you'll develop with respect to identifying the right metric. Okay, so that brings me to the close of my session. Thank you everyone for listening patiently to this entire session, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me through my handle Akhil Sharma 85, and I'd be happy to connect with all of you. If there are questions post this session as well, or now within the session as well, feel free to say jump into the questions at this point. So with that, stopping my sharing, and let's see if there are questions on the chat already. Or
Yeah,
maybe if folks are there, maybe just raise their hands and we can go forward. Yeah.
yeah. If someone wants to speak, they can raise their hand. We'll unmute them, or they can just
Yeah.
drop their question on the chat box. Also, Akhil, there's one question over the chat box. If you can
Yeah.
see over there,
I
can you
just saw,
answer it? Yeah.
how can I ensure users spend as much time on my app as possible? Spotify marketing, play 30 seconds, unskippable ads after 30 seconds. Yes. Yeah, so eventually you think about how do you want to optimize for the overall time spent. So you're not measuring it only on a day. You're not measuring it only for a particular user. You are actually measuring it as this at an aggregate level. So if you're irritating your users with needless ads at times, or probably unskippable ads, to some extent, I think companies have resorted to that. More often than not, if the users have a choice and if they are not finding that value in your product, they'll shift to other platforms. And eventually you'll see this aggregate metric or an average metric dropping month over month for you. So then this metric still gives you that key input that you want to see as a product manager. So does this answer your question, Dheeraj? Yeah, I see you have your hand raised still. Go ahead, ask your question. Yeah, please do. Please do, Dheeraj. Unmute yourself. Maybe I think Abhinav, you'll need to
Yeah, I
unmute
allowed him.
Dheeraj.
I
Yeah.
allowed him
Yeah.
to. Dheeraj, you can unmute yourself.
Can you unmute Dheeraj? Abhinav looks like he's not able to.
Um, Hello. Yeah, I unmuted him, but like he has to,
No issues. Then you
enable
can
his
actually,
mic from
yeah.
his side.
Dheeraj,
Yeah.
maybe you can type in your question on the chat. Maybe till that point, if anyone else has question. Okay, I see one from Nikita, while slightly digressing from the topic, but yeah, I think PM roles are similar. You need to identify what is your niche, what is your core domain, what is your expertise that you can actually bring into the role. Product management roles typically earlier were reserved for experienced candidates in Indian markets, especially now with the advent of startups. I think whoever has a knack for it can actually try their hands with APM kind of profiles. You have 8 years of experience already. I think you can switch to a PM career, but identify what is in your domain or what is your core functional area of expertise. Try and see if there's a product which is aligned to that, and then see if you can actually get an internship, do certain shadow projects with PMs in there, and then probably expect a referral from that angle. So hope that answers your question as well, Nikita.
If you have any follow-up question, Nikita, you can unmute yourself. I've allowed you to unmute yourself.
Maybe at this point you can allow everyone to unmute. Abhinav.
Sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, I think I talked about Spotify, for example. I think there's a question from Giant. So see the products around you and then go through that 8-step process that I talked about. They typically measure, so you find that there are multiple options for you to begin with to measure the success of a product. And then you can actually filter it down by answering all of these questions step by step in there. So if you want, you can actually give me an example of a product that you find particularly confusing, and then we can actually talk about it. I'm not sure whether you use LinkedIn a lot, but let's say you've used LinkedIn, and that may be a complicated product to think about. Say, how do you measure success of a platform such as LinkedIn in there? So yeah, let's actually go about that process. Again, let's see for LinkedIn, what is the success? How does LinkedIn earn money? What is their primary channel of earning money, monetizing the users? They sell these, say, paid programs wherein, say, you can actually upgrade your profile to a premium profile. But more often than not, say, their bulk of the revenue actually comes in through um, engagement on the platform and engagement with the companies. One of those engagements is actually the job interactions that people have. So typically, recruiters use LinkedIn for getting the jobs. So for basically getting the candidates for their jobs, and that's where they actually convert themselves into paid users, a subscription-led model that actually helps them find the right candidates. Now that is the dominant revenue channel for LinkedIn. Let's see who are the parties involved within this. There's a job poster, there is a job seeker, there is an engagement which is happening with them. So let's say a number of jobs posted on the platform is one option. But then that probably is not the measure of success, because if you're not finding the right candidates, eventually your recruiters will actually go away from the platform. That means a number of applications is something that we should probably look at, say number of people or candidates applying to the jobs. But then again, you may find a lot of candidates applying to the jobs and them not having the fitment for the role. So then again, recruiters find it difficult, or even the genuine job seekers find it difficult to use the platform for job search, and then the purpose doesn't really get fulfilled. So maybe the third option is how many of those applications that are opening up, how many of the job posts that are opening up are getting qualified candidates in there, and what is the number of qualified applications per job post in there. If that increases, do you see the overall number of people who are using the platform will grow? Maybe yes, because all of them will find value both on the consumer side or the user side, as well as on the job poster side. Now, you can also argue, say, LinkedIn also supports some other purposes for influencers in there, for people who are building content right now. So for them, this model will vary, because now we are talking about a different business for LinkedIn. So the North Star metric for LinkedIn in that case, for that business, will change. This will be more engagement. How many people are engaging with your content on a ongoing basis? So it depends upon the context of the business that you're actually trying to optimize for. Identify what is a business lever for that, and then ask those questions whether the value is added at each level for both the parties or all the participants who are actually participating in that transaction. And then hope that answers, Jayant, your question in there. Okay. I'm not getting any feedback, but I'm hoping I'm answering some of the questions. Yeah. Um, Parinita, your question is, yeah, so I think, say, as you grow older or more experienced within the roles, I think you'd find that your intuition starts to take over a little bit, because if you fundamentally see what is intuition, intuition is also uh, a way, heuristic for humans or anyone, which is based on the past experiences, the data that you see, that actually influences how you are likely to react in a particular occasion. So if you're more experienced, you develop a bit of an experience-led intuition. You actually know sometimes, say, these are the theses that may work versus these are the theses that may not work. But having said that, if you just lead with intuition, the final say proof of the pudding is when you eat it at this point. So that is the core moment of truth happens when a user actually interacts with the product. Even if you are the most experienced product manager with very strong intuition, if you're not measuring success correctly, if you're not testing your thesis well, you might find that your users are not responding to your experience-led intuition as such. And you may find it difficult to optimize a product at beyond a particular point if you just rely on intuition. So it's important that you really follow a methodical, data-driven process. Your intuition can actually help you hone down certain hypotheses. It can also help you filter out certain initiative or thesis that may not work. But mostly at the end of it, it is about measuring it correctly. Hopefully that gives you an answer, Parinita. Okay, so looks like Nikita was facing the similar problem in terms of unmuting herself. Yeah, I find the work PMs are doing in the startups very similar to what I do in content marketing. I have learned analytics tools and design tools, unable to understand the difference between the roles anymore. No, I think there is a big difference when you think about content marketing and product. I think content marketing, of course, is also data-driven, engagement-led. Every content that you put out there, you'd want to measure the success of that. But over a product career, you would actually maintain and manage a product across their life cycle. So it's not just that key interaction that you're measuring. You're also looking at how a product will develop, how you would actually build, say, MVPs. How would you think about micro optimizations, and how would you think about sunsetting a product as well, in that sense? So maybe as a content marketer, at some points, in some on some occasions, you might actually think about some of these aspects, but I don't think, say, that will cover the overall product life cycle as a user. So product management role in itself, so the current discussion that we did was only one aspect of it. Product management role is a very, very comprehensive kind of a role. So if you actually get into this, get a hang of it, it's an experience-led role as well. So think, if you can actually get more experience around it, you'll uncover some of those nuances as well. Okay. North Star metric typically is one. I think I just saw the question from Soumyadeep. Typically, you should be able to answer the clear question whether this is one metric. If you have on your dashboard as a CEO or the product leader of that company, would you be able to still be able to optimize your product in there? Say, if you see just the progress on that product month over month on that metric, month over month, would you be able to say with confidence that your product or your company is performing well overall? So it's that one clear metric for yourself. Yeah, so I think I talked about some of them, Vaibhav, the North Star metrics. For example, Ola and Uber, it's rides booked overall. For Adobe, we would basically think building a subscription-led creative cloud, desktop cloud. So it was basically the number of subscriptions per month that we had for Creative Cloud products, and number of active subscribers that you used to have, which means the people who are paying. That actually relates back to your ARR, which is annual recurring revenue, and that actually also connects to a company's success. So that was for Adobe. If you see within the gaming industry, this is again very, very engagement led, and say there are multiple games on a gaming platform on a single day. So you'd want to see how much time a user spends on your platform, because if a user spends more time on your platform, typically uh, they'll actually play more, they'll actually engage more. You are likely to earn more through ad revenue, you're likely to earn more through the wagers that users actually put in. So that's typically what you think about. At Razorpay, the North Star metric would be the number of transactions going through your payment gateway, which are successful, because that's where all the participants within the ecosystem find value. So whether it is say website which is integrated payment gateway such as Razorpay, or whether it is a user who's using that product for making payments in there. Okay, hope that answers Vaibhav's question. There are few other questions as well. I think now you really need to sort this out. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult for us to
Yeah, yeah.
identify.
Like you can
Yeah,
answer one or two questions more and then we'll wrap it up.
sure, sure. Then I think I'll just take one more question
Sure.
from,
So,
yeah, I think Vanshika. I think I have not answered her question yet. Were there any NSMs used by the competitors that we should consider? Typically, you'd see, say, if the business models are same, most of your competitors will also get to that same logical conclusion. So think about, say, the how would you measure? Say, let's think about YouTube and Vimeo. Both of them are actually trying to get more people to engage with your, or say YouTube and Dailymotion is a better example. Think about those as two platforms where people go to watch videos. Now, both of them are optimizing the same metric, because people want to watch, spend more time. All these platforms want people to spend more time watching their videos. That's where they start earning. Maybe say a different platform. If you compare uh, YouTube with say Netflix, there may be a difference because Netflix really basically makes money through subscriptions and not through ads. So now they may want to see number of subscribers if that number is growing on a day in day out basis. It's an active subscriber base, which is basically a subscription-led model in there. So it's important that you identify whether the competitors that you've chosen are in the same industry, whether they have the same business model, and then you'd more often than not find that the North Star metrics are also same in there. Yeah, I think maybe one last question then, Dheeraj, and after this we'll wrap this up. I'm also cognizant that most of you are actually also pretty late in the probably on your weekend. I don't want to spoil your weekend just for the session, but I just want to make sure, say, I answer this one. Some companies have a bad PMF or they optimize their PMF after MVP. How can we as a product manager ensure that product we build has a good PMF from get-go? So I think typically, so you'd see that each of the stages that I talked about, PMF really occurs between the introduction and the growth phase. Uh, at this phase, between the introduction and the growth phase, you'd actually be testing a lot of prototypes. So if there is a company which has done a good job of launching prototypes, identifying the right feedback from the customers, and quickly uh, brought in that feedback in terms of product development process, you'd see those companies actually working well with respect to their early achievement of product market fit, identifying the right metric to optimize for, and then moving forward from there. You may see that there are certain companies which are still successful because they've been pumping in marketing dollars at times for getting the users with freebies, but they'll start to struggle with the PMF if they actually stop burning that cash. So that's where it's a much more difficult thing as a product manager to actually get to a PMF now because you don't have the right signals and the right incentives for the users to actually tell you the right story. For that, you'd actually have to very closely look at the data. You need to see where people are engaging, where they are dropping off. Are they engaging with the right set of features that you really wanted them to say engage with? Are these revenue earning features for you? Or are they leading features for you so that people will eventually people you are using that will become more valuable for you? And you find if you find that the answer to that is no, then there is an issue with your product market fit. And as a product manager, it's your job to actually discover that as the company is also pumping in the marketing dollars and getting into the market. So each startup has different models to actually become successful within the organization, within the ecosystem. But at some point, sooner or later, they'll actually have to find a PMF. Otherwise, it is unsustainable for the product for the startup to succeed. In that sense. Hope with that, I've answered most of your questions in there, folks, and very very happy that I could see that kind of engagement from for all of you folks in there. Would be happy to keep connecting with you wherever there are questions. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and share your experiences, share your questions. Most probably, I'll be able to reply to you over the weekends. And if not, let's actually get and engage at some other point, some other forum again, and we'll be happy to connect with all of you again. Thank you. And thank you for the session as well. Thank you for the opportunity, Abhinav.
Thank you, sir. It was an incredible session. I hope the attendees also like this. Yeah, we'll be down for future engagements as well. So yeah, have a good day, sir. And by by this note, we'll end the meeting. Have a good day. Good night.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.